Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be ranking my best and worst books that I read in 2022. So I read a total of 83 books, not including the books that I'm reading right now, but I actually don't know if I'm going to be able to finish them before the end of the year. But out of the books that I did read, those 83, I would say that the majority were 4 to 5 star reads. And also the main genre that I read this year was fantasy romance and romance. And I'm so happy I was able to read that many books this year. My goal was 50 books and I definitely surpassed that goal. So I am just very happy with that, and I'm excited to go into 2023 with a new goal in mind. I never really thought I would be able to fit all the books that I read into my current schedule, just with like my lifestyle and my work schedule. I didn't know if I'd be able to fit. I didn't know if I could fit all of that reading time in, and what I found was utilizing certain periods of my day for reading while also doing other things. So if I'm cleaning, I should listen to an audiobook. If I'm on the treadmill or on the Stairmaster, I should read on my Kindle. And on the times when it's late at night and I'm winding down for the day and I want to watch TV, I try to swap that out for reading a good book, especially on the weekends. So I ended up finding more time than I thought during my days to make room for reading, but I do plan going into 2023 to make even more room for reading so that I can get to a goal of 100 books in 2023. But I encourage anyone going into the new year trying to read some more books, trying to figure out ways to read more, to just try and take your normal everyday activities and find a way to read either during those times like I do, or just see if there's anything you can swap out for a book instead. So TikTok, Netflix, things like that, try and swap out 30 minutes of reading time instead of screen time and see if that helps you at all. And always make a list of the books you're really wanting to read. So if you have a TBR list like this long, then just start crossing them off one by one. Don't overthink it, and I think that will help a long way. So we're gonna get into the tier ranking video soon, but before we do that, I did want to give some honorable mentions to a few books that I was really impressed with but did not make the cut for my tier ranking video. These are books that I personally loved, but they're kind of in the middle of like top reads of the year and worst reads of the year. These are like my 3 to 4 star books that I think anyone could read. Definitely recommend these, and most of these, if not all of them, are a series. The first one I want to mention is the Red Queen series, which is a YA fantasy. If you like The Hunger Games, if you like Divergent, I think you will really enjoy this series. It is fast-paced. There are 4 books in this series. And it centers around a main character. She discovers that she has a power that she did not think she could have because of her blood type, and it kind of turns this entire world topsy-turvy. A lot of things go down from this discovery, and I'm not going to really get too much into it because I did talk about this in prior videos, but I do recommend this book to anyone really looking for a fast-paced young adult read that is good with not a lot of spice, but is really into like action, political stuff, and just a really fired up, electric main character. I think you will really enjoy this series. The next series I want to talk about is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This series is, I would say, like a prequel series to Once Upon a Broken Heart, but you don't have to have read either of those series together, if that makes sense. The series follows 2 sisters who are thrust into this game called Caraval. It is a very interactive game where it happens once a year in a remote location, and everything is not as it seems. They have clues hidden in like towns, and you have to solve the clues, figure out a way to beat the game. The game master legend is very like mysterious. A lot of people don't know anything about him and his powers, how he makes the game come to life. There is romance, there is a lot of mystery, there's sisterly bonds. It's a very fun read, very magical, great writing, great storytelling, I had a great time reading this series. It didn't make the cut only because I really enjoyed Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After more, so we are throwing it here. And the last series I want to mention is the Dance of Thieves duology. I was actually very pleasantly surprised reading these books. I didn't think I would like them as much as I did. The cover was more like adult fantasy versus young adult fantasy. I don't know if anyone else gets the vibe from the book cover, but the storyline was so different from anything I've ever read. I really loved the characters in this book. I love the dual POV, and Kazi and Jace were just a great blend of characters. We have someone that's really, really fiery, doesn't know where she really came from. There's a lot of mystery to her background. And then we have a Jace who has pretty much everything given to him. He is born into kind of like this royal family thing, and he has a lot of responsibilities thrust into him. And the two of them clash. It goes from there. Vow of Thieves was so, so good. And I recommend this book series to anyone, whether you like fantasy or fantasy romance. There is not much romance in here. It's very, very mild, but the fantasy in here is fast-paced, easy to read, and just a great time. But now that we got those books out of the way, we are now going to get into my tier ranking video. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, guys, so here is my tier ranking scale. We have about 16 books here, and I'm going to talk about the names for each of these tier rankings. So the first one is amazing, would reread, and sure enough, I have reread some of these books already. They are amazing, 5-star reads, hands down. Then we have love. Not much more to say other than I just loved these books. They were 4 or 5-star reads for me, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Then we have good enough to recommend. They are fine to read. I didn't have an issue with them at all. They may not have wowed me, but I would recommend them to anyone regardless. I think anyone would enjoy these books. Then we have Not My Cup of Tea. I personally didn't love it, but I could understand how someone else would enjoy these books. And last but not least is I Lost IQ Points. These were bottom of the barrel for me. I regret reading these books, and I will not apologize for saying I hated this so much. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're starting off strong with The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. And this is going into not my cup of tea. I was actually extremely disappointed in this book. Lucy Foley is a great author for mysteries and thrillers, and I loved the guest list. I loved the Paris apartment. And when I saw The Hunting Party, I immediately got super excited. I love the premise. It reminded me of And Then There Were None. And unfortunately for me, I just didn't get that vibe. I felt like the pacing was very slow for the storyline, and it didn't excite me enough for the climax at the end with the big reveal. I just was underwhelmed with that. The buildup just didn't do it for me. I wish that it was a little bit more angsty throughout the book. So unfortunately, it wasn't my cup of tea, but I could understand if someone else could appreciate the book more than me. Then we have A War of Two Queens. Wow. Okay, so this was definitely scrambled. Um, this also is not my cup of tea, and I think I'm being generous here because I really did not like this book. Um, the From Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout was a book series I actually really enjoyed. And once we got to book 4, this was the 4th book, I had high hopes. I thought it was going to close out the series, and it didn't. There is another book coming out, which I was not happy about. But to what happened to these characters, the stuff that went down in this book with our main protagonists, um, it was just really just went a downward spiral, and I was very upset. And I know a lot of people agree. I know a lot of people disagree. So this is definitely a controversial opinion of mine. But I I think I give this like 2 stars. I know people like it. I know why people are okay with what happened in this book. I just was really not. I feel like, well, I'm not gonna fully say what I feel, but let's just say that I don't know if I will be continuing with this series, which is such a letdown because I do have the other three. I do have all 4 books in my collection, so we'll just see where this takes me. But moving on to a book I loved so much, and that was All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I would actually put this on, you know what? We're going to put it up here because honestly, I would reread this book. It was so good. I loved the main characters. I loved the storyline. I thought it was very unique with our main character moving back to this town um after, not living her there most of her adult life. She grew up there with her mom who disappeared when she was a child, and she rents an Airbnb from somebody who did not know he had an Airbnb listed. So that was a very fun, grumpy sunshine read. It had a great romance, great build up, slow burn, guys. If you guys like slow burn romances, like this is the slowest, but the build up is amazing, and the relationship between our 2 main characters was very wholesome, very sweet. I love the character development towards the end, and it was just a great read. I honestly could reread this every single year, and it makes me want to live in a cabiny place in Colorado. Next up is another one that I would reread. I actually am rereading it right now, and it is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This book is hands down my favorite book of the year. If you guys wanted to know, there you go. That's the book. Um, it's amazing. It's a young adult fantasy read by Stephanie Garber, who wrote the Caraval series, and it's kind of a spin-off off of one of the characters in that series. So we have this fate. His name is Jax, and he is the Prince of Hearts, and he's working alongside a character named Evangeline to kind of open this, or there's like a prophecy going on that they're trying to solve and be a part of and unlock and all of this stuff. And it is a great, great story with amazing writing and just magical storytelling. The atmosphere, the setting of the world that this takes place in is so um like palpable. You can see and feel everything going on in this book just because of the writing style. It's great. And the characters themselves are also amazing to read about. I can't wait for book 3 to come out. I think it's the last in the series, but book 2 ended in such a cliffhanger that I was just silent for 30 minutes. I didn't know what to say because I was besides myself. Highly recommend. I would read this every year for the rest of my life. And I won't be upset about it. It was so good. Next up, we have Promises and Pomegranates. This is part of the Monsters and Muses type of book series, cycle, something like that. Each book is a standalone, but they have similar characters within each book. And this was a 1-star read for me. I lost IQ points. And I can't believe I actually read all the way through, to be honest. What got me into reading this book was the description said it was a Hades and Persephone's very loose kind of modern day retelling, if you will, of like mafia characters. Um, that was the I can see how they use that to hook people in because otherwise I never would have read this book. The relationship between these 2 characters was so problematic to me. The main character, I think his name was Kane, or I don't know, he was like a doctor, and he worked for the mafia, but he's like Dexter, like he enjoys butchering people. So he is technically a doctor, or was at one time a physician, lost his license, works for the mafia, and he marries this 18-year-old mafia lord daughter. And they live in this island together far away from the main city, and he does very weird things, and it's their relationship, and it's a mess, and I hated it so much. I think I continued reading this book and finished it because I thought it could get better somehow. And I don't know what I was telling myself that for, because that did not happen. It was terrible. And I'm so sorry to say that, because, someone wrote this book, and, maybe someone would like this. Maybe someone enjoyed this book, but it was just not for me. It was way too problematic. Moving on to The Bridge Kingdom by Daniel L. Jensen. I'm gonna put this with love. It was a 5-star read for me. I wouldn't necessarily reread it. I just think it was a great story. I would recommend this to everyone, and it was just so unique in the storyline, especially in book 2. Our main characters are an assassin and a prince from 2 different kingdoms. They get together. There is a lot of political intrigue in this book. There's not a lot of spice. There's not a lot of um, banter. You don't really hear much of these 2 characters together, but separate in their minds and their thoughts. And I thought that was really cool. I do enjoy the character development here. Our main girl character goes through a lot through her childhood, and we unpack all of that in detail. And book 2 was phenomenal. So I really enjoyed this book. I can't wait for the last book to come out. But if you guys have read this book, or have seen it on Kindle Unlimited and you're thinking about reading it, I would recommend picking it up now. Next up, Glow by Raven Kennedy. This one actually got knocked off of the best book of the year for me, only because The Ballad of Never After just threw me for a loop. But this was a close second place, and I'm putting it in amazing. Would reread. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put it in love, because I would reread like the first 2 books maybe. Book 3 was so good, but I wouldn't necessarily reread it, but it's amazing. The series as a whole is 5 stars for me. And this book did not disappoint. The storyline is great. I'm so glad they are spreading it out to 4 books. And it is a King Midas reimagining, I guess. So we have a King Midas who everything he touches turns to gold, and he has a girl named Orin who has been cold touched. So she is completely gold head to toe, and she lives in a gilded cage that he made for her in his palace. Um, a lot of stuff goes down between him and other kingdoms. There's like 6 or 7 kingdoms, and her and their power and all of this. And wow, it was so cool, so unique, different. We do have some fae in there as well, which is nice. Always love having fae in my books. Um, Definitely recommend this fantasy romance to anyone. It is a slow burn, and there is in book 1 some violence that goes down, so just a trigger warning there. But the book series as a whole is phenomenal. And if you're interested in something a little different from the norm of fantasy romance that you normally get with like A Court of Thorns and Roses, I think you would really enjoy this book series. Just be aware with book 1, but keep reading through it because it's worth it. Next, we have the Atlas Six. And when I first read this book, I was so intrigued and curious and impressed with the writing and how pretentious it was and how well it matched up with the characters. The storyline itself is very unique and more science fictiony than fantasy, but I really enjoyed this book, and I'm going to put it in good enough to recommend. Um it's not for everybody, but I would recommend this book if you are interested in sci-fi, if you're interested in fantasy, and if you're interested in dark academia, because I would categorize this as a dark academia book trope, I guess. We have essentially 6 characters who are very unlikable, but they have magical abilities, and they have been um, assembled, I guess, to partake in the Alexandrian Society. This is a very secret society protecting the Library of Alexandria, which holds tons of knowledge about anything and everything. And with their magical abilities, they are able to protect it. There is a competition where only 5 of the 6 of them can continue on and stay with the society. A lot of stuff goes down. And yeah, it was very unique, very interesting to read, kind of difficult. I guess also to read and understand fully because there's a lot of like science and mathematics stuff in there that I didn't fully understand, but it was still very enjoyable to read. And I would recommend this. Give it a chance, read through it. I think you will enjoy the story. Okay, then we have A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting, and I'm gonna put this with love. This book was definitely a 5-star read for me. One of my favorites of the year as well. This was witty, it was romantic, there was angst, there was banter, which I gotta say, having good banter in a romance books will make or break it for me. Like, I need to have the back and forth, not necessarily enemies to lovers, but just a great writing between the two main love interests, I guess. This is about a girl named Kate who her parents have passed away and she's responsible for her sisters. She needs to marry rich in order to provide for them, and she sets out to go to London to find herself a rich husband. The I guess the Earl, who is the elder brother of the guy she is trying to swoon, is in on her tricks and tries kind of catches her in the act and breaks a deal with her to help her find a love match without ruining his brother. And so that's kind of what the book is about. It was funny. If you like The Princess Diaries, if you like Bridgerton, I would recommend this. It was such a fun read, a clean, romantic, historical fiction book. Yeah, if you like Bridgerton, read this. Next up is Vipers and Virtuosos. And what's so crazy is after reading Promises and Pomegranates, you'd think I would have known better. You'd think I would have been like, okay, Allie, enough of this. You don't need to read any more from this series. And you would be wrong because I did, in fact, read this book. And in case if there's like a 0-star rating I could give, I would give this book because it was astronomically worse than Promises and Pomegranates, actually. So we have like some stalker and this girl that he's kind of like obsessed with, and it, yeah, it's I don't really want to get into it too much, but that's kind of the vibe you get from this book. They're all reimaginings of like in modern day world of some Greek mythology stories, and they turn them into like real life scenarios, I guess. And it just was not it. It was narcissistic and creepy, so creepy. There's a scene where he's like watching her through binoculars into her cabin at night, and then he's in her cabin, like in the room, watching her do stuff. And it was just so weird. I cannot believe I read this book in its entirety. And I won't be reading actually anything else that she writes because I was just dumbfounded with a lot of emotions. Can you tell that I really didn't like these books? Okay, next we have Small Favors. I very much enjoyed this book as well. And I am going to put this with, let's see. I'm going to put this in good enough to recommend. This book was highly enjoyable for me. I read this during the fall, and I definitely think it is a good book to read during the fall. It's kind of creepy. It definitely gives The Village meets Rumpelstiltskin, and you will see elements of that grim fairy tale in this book. It is creepy. There's a forest with monsters. You have a girl who unknowingly makes deals with somebody in return for favors, but then those favors reap dire consequences, and a lot of stuff goes down in this village in the middle of nowhere. It seems like it's like colonial, like early America settlement time. So, very cool storyline. Setting, atmosphere, the themes of greed and mob mentality is really there. And I think it was a great story overall. I would recommend this to everyone. If you are interested in mystery or even fantasy, I think you would enjoy this book. And yeah, I'm excited to read more from Aaron A. Craig. The Maid is another one that I would also recommend. This was a great read for me. I actually listened to this on Audible, and we do have a character with autism, or she is somewhere on the spectrum, but she is a maid at this very luxurious hotel, and a murder takes place. She ends up becoming a suspect, and it just goes from there. It's in her point of view. We have amazing storytelling, and just her dialogue is hilarious. Her train of thought is funny and very relatable to anyone that's on the spectrum, or if you know someone on the spectrum, how they talk, how they think, it's very similar. I would recommend this. Um, Maybe not for everybody, but I do think it's worth recommending anyway. It was a great read for me, very quick to listen to on audio, and I want to have this actually in my collection, so I need to get that. But yeah, it was a great mystery read, trying to figure out what really went on in this hotel. I love his hotel mysteries, and yeah, definitely recommend this book. I think towards the end of the year, I ended up figuring out that if I don't like a book, I don't have to finish it. So, Fairy Tale by Stephen King, I'm actually gonna put here. Um, Not my cup of tea. I read a third of it, maybe close to halfway, and it was just not it. It was very slow. This was my first Stephen King book I've read, and I really tried. I really, really tried. A lot of people love him, love this book, has amazing reviews on Goodreads, and I don't understand the hype. I just felt the story was very slow and drawn out, and it should have gotten to the point a lot sooner. I think that it probably will end very well, but I was just so bored reading it, I couldn't continue. So, if anyone else has read the book and has enjoyed it, let me know. It wasn't it for me, unfortunately, but yeah, at least I can say I gave Stephen King a shot. Ruth Ware's The Lion Game was another dud for me. I'm gonna put it in not my cup of tea as well. This book was great in its had potential. It definitely had potential. Unfortunately, the ending was not it for me. I really did not enjoy I don't want to say. There is infidelity that goes on in this book. There's some weird, creepy student teacher thing going on, and like yeah, there's a weird mystery going on in this creepy town, in a boarding school for girls, and these kids that went to school together, they all reunite as adults because their past comes back to haunt them, and this game that they used to play growing up really, really comes to bite them in the butt as adults. They're all messed up in their own way as adults because of their childhood and their school memories and all of that. And I really just was disappointed with how everything ended. It should have ended differently, in my opinion. So, wasn't my cup of tea. If you liked it, that's great. Love that for you. But yeah, not for me. I love Ruth Ware. I think she's a great author. Just this one was not it for me, unfortunately. Okay, then we have two more. We're almost done. The Paris Library was it was so good, and I would put it on amazing, would reread. However, I cried so much in this book. I don't think I could take reading this again. It was just so emotional. It was heart-wrenching reading about World War II and the library, American Library in Paris. It was a great story of an elderly woman who has been through so much in World War II, living now in America, and her next door neighbor, learning about this older woman's history and what brought her to America. We go back and forth in time, so we have a really great perspective there of what life was like in World War II when Nazi occupies Paris, or when Germany occupies Paris, and there's like a ton of, Nazi soldiers, um, getting rid of a lot of books and starting to take the Jews out of the city. So it was very beautiful, great, great, great storytelling, beautifully written. It was very emotional, and I'm very happy that I read it. That's why I put in love, but rereading it I think would just be too much for me. Okay, and lastly, we have The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and I actually made a video on this because this was my first book I think I gave such a low rating to. It was just my first realization that workplace romance tropes are not for me. I really do not like the boss and employee relationship storyline. I think it is almost inappropriate, and also I think the characters in the story were just very annoying for me. I think it's Rowan is the main guy. He just really gave me the ick. I did not like him at all, but more than him was Zara, our main character. She goes kind of from being super bubbly to very like upset to saying she's shy, but then talking to him thinking she's not going to get fired. And I just found it to be very unrealistic, would never happen in real life, and a waste of my time. So I'm going to put this in I Lost IQ points. I know a lot of people actually love her and love this series. Terms and Conditions, which is book 2, wasn't so bad because it's with his brother, who I enjoyed much more. But this book was just terrible for me, and I actually don't understand how people like these two characters, unfortunately. I think the cover is beautiful though. But yeah, this is my tier ranking of best and worst books I read in 2022. All right, guys, and that is going to conclude today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of the books that I ranked best and worst of the year. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments. I would love to talk about it with you. And yeah, if you have any recommendations on books to read in 2023, I would love your recommendations. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, I will catch you in my next video. Bye.